Tomorrow marks 2 months since a tornado ripped through an Edwardsville Amazon warehouse. Many hunkered down inside. 6 never made it out. Tonight, some survivors ask, could more have been done to protect and save lives?
Right now, the federal government continues investigating all of this, but so does News 4. And our investigator, Susan L. Corey, has new audio and new information you're only seeing here from the moments before and after impact.
December 10th, 2021.
911, where's your emergency?
The Amazon warehouse got hit.
Panic 911 calls.
People are trapped in the bathroom. We got hit by a tornado.
From people working in this Amazon warehouse.
The building just fell on the way. I need help! Help!
When a tornado struck.
The shelter area, the tornado hit. Everything's tore up here. Not okay.
6 people who took cover in a bathroom never made it home.
Nobody wakes up and thinks this is going to be the day I die.
Alonzo Harris is one of 40 employees who survived. He's a delivery driver, and that day just returned to the warehouse in Edwardsville, Illinois, when a manager redirected him.
Stop your vehicles. There is a storm coming. Seek shelter.
Harris followed coworkers to Amazon's Take Shelter area. He describes it as a windowless hallway. Amazon says it was not designed to be a storm shelter.
The floor started shaking like it was coming off the ground. I was in the corridor. I turned around and I saw debris flying in the air. I screamed out loud, Lord, I don't want to get sucked away, because I thought I was going to get sucked away.
This is what the warehouse looked like before, standing at more than 1 million square feet. The Take Shelter area was in the north side of the building. It's the south part that took a direct hit.
If you had the resources to build stronger buildings, and you could do it. Build safety rooms or something, you could do it.
The Amazon warehouse wasn't built to withstand an EF3 storm. In fact, the type of construction, called tilt-up, has a history of catastrophic failure during powerful tornadoes. Tilt-up involves lifting concrete wall panels, which are held in place by the roof. Strong winds travel up the walls, and if the roof is torn off, it can cause the walls to collapse.
Ordinary buildings are not designed for tornadoes.
Mark Levitan is a lead research engineer at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, known as NIST.
The word tornado does not appear in our building codes and standards, with the exception of if we're discussing storm shelter.
He led the study following the 2011 tornado in Joplin, Missouri, an EF5 storm that left a devastating mile-wide path, killing 161 people. NIST researchers found 135 of them died from building failures. The study looked at the Home Depot, a tilt-up building. The metal roof flew away and almost every wall crumbled, killing 8 people. Researchers found similar buildings were prone to structural collapse, but met building codes, which required withstanding 120-mile-an-hour winds. Speeds in Joplin were nearly double.
Have there been any conversations about adding storm shelters to those types of buildings that we know could be more vulnerable?
NIST recommends that we install storm shelters across a wide range of building types in the most tornado-prone regions of the country.
After Joplin, federal building codes changed to require storm shelters in schools. In Missouri and Illinois, there's no state mandate for shelters in warehouses or large commercial spaces.
If the goal is to protect life safety, then that's the most important thing would be to install a storm shelter.
The city of Joplin weighed that choice.
It was decided not to make that a requirement.
Instead, chief building official Brian Wickland said many people did it on their own.
We saw more commercial buildings put in storm shelters.
But the city did go above and beyond standard building codes, including requiring hurricane strappings to better hold down roofs.
Starting to ask ourselves, all the things that we thought were safe before, how are they not as safe as we wish they were?
We repeatedly tried to ask Amazon about what happened here and if there are now plans to add shelters in areas prone to tornadoes. The company won't talk to us and maintains the warehouse was safe and met all building codes.
If you weren't going to send these workers home, make sure they had a safe place to go.
Attorney Jack Cassiato represents the family of Austin McEwen, a contract worker who died in the storm. They're suing Amazon, the construction company and developer, for negligence.
Amazon is able online to sell FEMA tornado-proof storm shelters, upwards of 8, 9, 10,000 for a shelter to be installed in a home, but their own facilities couldn't have similar type shelters for their workers.
Casiato claims Amazon didn't follow its emergency procedures.
Those on the south side of the building were directed by Amazon to shelter in a bathroom.
Amazon won't comment on that. The company referred us back to the statement it put out after the McEwen's lawsuit, saying local teams were following the weather conditions closely, and as soon as a warning was issued, they worked to move people to safety as quickly as possible. News 4 Investigates obtained Amazon's emergency action procedure. In the tornado response section, during a tornado watch, staff need to check local forecasts. If it elevates to a tornado warning, they have a take shelter signal and everyone goes to the designated shelter area. After the storm, Amazon reps said that process worked.
The team did what they were trained to do. The employees and our partners did what they were trained to do. Everyone was moving with a sense of urgency.
That doesn't match up with Alonzo Harris's account that most employees weren't in the take shelter area.
There was only 8 people in there.
When the storm hit.
Right.
There were only 8 people.
That's correct. People were in the warehouse and they were in the restroom who got knocked down and hurt.
OSHA is investigating what happened.
Tragic day.
Meanwhile, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker wants lawmakers to work on building code changes.
With all of the warehouses that are being built or have been built, should we be setting a state standard for that?
It's the right road for Harris, delivering added safety to employees.
The people who didn't survive, they're always in the back of my head.
As Amazon now looks to rebuild, the tornado risk remains. We checked NOAA weather records from Madison County, which Edwardsville is in, and surrounding parts of Missouri and Illinois. In the past decade, there's been at least 72 tornadoes. That count only goes through September of last year. It doesn't include the Edwardsville storm. Susan Elcory, News 4 Investigates.
Months after a deadly tornado ripped through an Amazon warehouse in Edwardsville, new questions come to surface tonight about the facility. Specifically, was the warehouse structurally safe? I'm Samantha Jones. Corey Stark is off. One of the first people called to that damage that fateful night claims what he saw may not have been up to code. Only News 4 investigator Susan Elcory is taking a closer look at what happened and who knew what and when.
The Amazon warehouse got hit.
911 calls capture cries for help.
I need help! Help!
And the chaos of a tornado.
The building just fell out of nowhere.
Causing part of the Edwardsville Amazon warehouse to collapse.
The shelter area, the tornado hit. Everything's tore up.
6 workers lost their lives. But the devastation shows another picture to an engineer who claims he saw significant structural issues the night of the December 10th disaster. He lays out his observations and concerns in this 4-page memo obtained by News 4 Investigates. The man behind it all is Dan Bruno. He was called to the Edwardsville warehouse as a FEMA-trained structure specialist. He's also the fire marshal for the West County EMS and Fire Protection District and a licensed engineer.
It moved very quickly, and it was catastrophic.
Amazon maintains the building was up to code, a statement reps made starting days after the storm.
So we know that the building was constructed consistent with code.
Dan Bruno's memo has a different take. The night of the storm, Bruno says he was asked to perform a structural assessment of the damage. He snapped these pictures that are now public records. In the memo, Bruno focuses on the steel support columns, saying some appeared to have been lifted out of the floor, like a peg coming out of a hole. He goes on to explain, I could find no weld or bolted connection at the base of any column. Edwardsville follows the 2006 International Building Code. News 4 Investigates found it requires anchorage of columns to foundations.
We call it a smoking gun piece of evidence.
Attorney Jack Casciato represents the family of Austin McEwen, one of the 6 workers killed in the building. They're suing Amazon, the construction company and developer, for negligence. They just added 2 engineering companies and a design group to that suit.
The proper inspection should have been taken.
In Edwardsville, city inspectors check buildings before, during, and after construction. Those records are public. News 4 Investigates tried to find out what went on with the Amazon warehouse. The city hasn't released all of the records. News 4 started requesting those documents in January. In this request, we asked for all building permit applications. The city sent several records, but did not include ones for the actual construction permit for the building. Recently, we asked for inspection records. Edwardsville City Hall told us it needs to extend the time to respond. So we went to the Public Works Department, which oversees permits and inspections.
I didn't know if anyone in the city had seen this letter.
This employee said it was news to her. She told us the city's 2 inspectors were out, but she did leave to see if the department director would talk to us. He chose to stay in his office. There is at least one city employee who knows something. In Dan Bruno's memo, he says he discussed what was found with Fire Chief James Whiteford. We called Whiteford, who said he had no comment. Bruno claims he also went to a federal investigator with OSHA, who stated that what Bruno was telling him was consistent with information he had from other sources. News 4 Investigates asked Amazon how it knows the warehouse was up to code. The company wouldn't do an interview and sent a statement saying the investigation is ongoing, so it's premature and misleading to suggest there were any structural issues. It goes on explaining Amazon leased the warehouse after it was built in 2018, but it was in compliance with all applicable building codes as documented by the city. Those are the same records News 4 requested, but hasn't received.
Tragic day.
Questions around the warehouse design are growing, starting with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who earlier this year called for change.
With all of the warehouses that are being built or have been built, should we be setting a state standard for that?
A recent News 4 investigation found the warehouse was built using a type of construction called tilt-up, which has a history of catastrophic failure during powerful tornadoes.
Ordinary buildings are not designed for tornadoes. If the goal is to protect life safety, then that's the most important thing would be to install a storm shelter.
That has some lawmakers talking.
Ensuring that you have some type of FEMA-rated structure inside the building to protect the employers is something that we really need to take a look at.
Illinois State Rep. Jay Hoffman is a co-sponsor of a proposed bill to create the Warehouse Safety Standards Task Force with the goal of changing policies.
I think we need to look at one building code for these types of warehouses that are going to ensure the safety of the workers.
We asked him about the memo and the claims in it.
I've not seen that memo, but I'm sure it'll be part of the information that's going to be reviewed.
A review he wants to see include what happened inside the warehouse before the tornado, when Amazon workers tried to take shelter, not realizing the danger headed their way.
Would you personally want to be in a warehouse built like that if a tornado was hitting?
Because of what happened and the devastating results, it makes people, I think twice about doing that.
We know OSHA is investigating. That report is due in June. Amazon tells us there's currently a comprehensive forensic examination of the building that's being done. We asked for clarification on who's doing that and if the results will be made public. Amazon only told us it's being handled internally. Susan Elcory, News 4 Investigates.
As we come on the air tonight, News 4 uncovering new information in the Edwardsville Amazon tornado disaster. This comes as News 4 Investigates continues probing the deadly December tornado.
And for the first time tonight, we are getting a look at inspection records. Investigator Susan Elcory shows us how this comes amid a growing push for safety.
All I know is that we were just trying to knock down.
Debris flies in cell phone video, capturing an EF3 tornado destroying the Edwardsville Amazon warehouse.
The wind was blowing real hard, and then by the time I parked, that's when everything started.
Inside, there was no storm shelter.
Everybody yelling,
People are confused.
leaving employees trying to find safety.
We knew some people were missing. It was just terrifying.
6 people never made it home.
I could be dead and not talking to you at all.
Deontay Yancey believes Amazon should have done more to protect him and his coworkers. Now he's taking the company to court.
And that reality kicked in that my life is more important than a huge company, because clearly our lives weren't valued at all that night.
Yancey is one of 4 employees suing Amazon for negligence. The lawsuit also names Contegra Construction, the developer, 2 engineering firms, and a design group. According to the suit, all knew the warehouse didn't have a basement shelter, or safe room, and failed to provide a warehouse that met international building codes. Recent reporting by News 4 Investigates exposed this memo by a first responder and engineer. He was called to the warehouse the night of the storm and claimed he saw several support columns that weren't anchored to the foundation, which is a building code violation. Amazon reps deny that.
So we know that the building was constructed consistent with code?
In Edwardsville, the city requires multiple inspections throughout construction. Ever since the storm, News 4 Investigates has been trying to get public records to see what was checked. After calls, emails, and trips into city offices, the city finally released 49 inspection reports. We went through each and learned every inspection at the Amazon warehouse shows approved. Nothing failed. The reports have limited information. Each is a page long, and inspectors checked a box for what they looked at. Those records are a stark contrast to other inspection reports News 4 Investigates found, like this one for the Edwardsville Township offices, where city inspectors noted code concerns and snapped multiple pictures. We asked the city why there aren't records of inspectors taking notes or pictures at the Amazon site. The city hasn't answered. Amazon rented the warehouse after it was built. In a statement to News 4, the company claims it's leading a comprehensive forensic examination into the warehouse and added it's premature and misleading to suggest there were any structural issues.
I think we need to look at one building code for these types of warehouses.
State Rep Jay Hoffman is one of several Illinois lawmakers now questioning warehouse safety. He's co-sponsoring a bill to create a task force to look at just that.
I think it's important that we require that there be some type of a hazard shelter or safe area.
The task force would have 3 years before its recommendations are due, meaning it could be years before anything changes.
All right, so this is a thick steel door.
Some people aren't waiting.
We could stand 14 people in here.
About half an hour outside Edwardsville. The parish trucking lot just installed this storm shelter.
This was a very cheap option to put into a building. To save lives, it's definitely worth doing.
Something Safety Director Doug Parrish says was because of the Edwardsville tornado.
When it happens 40 miles up the road, you think, wow, this could be us, and what can we do to protect our people so it doesn't happen? So we don't want to lose anybody either.
Their company isn't alone.
We have seen a massive uptick in orders.
Illinois-based Safe Sheds makes these standalone shelters.
You can see the wheel hit the door here. It actually picked up a cab and a half pickup truck and bent it in half around the front corner of the shelter while the folks were in it.
Michelle Barbie says in 3 months after the Edwardsville tornado, they had as much business as they'd typically see in a year.
We have heard from a lot of large employers, small employers who are thinking maybe we need to take a look at this again. Weather patterns are shifting, things are getting worse.
Recently, Barbie says they even got a call from Amazon.
We got a solicitation to bid on a project for Amazon. They were looking for that particular facility at a large combined use shelter.
Did Edwardsville ever come up in that conversation?
Well, no, it didn't. We couldn't really go very far with them because they were looking for a shelter that could handle 50 to 150 people, and that isn't something that we could do, so we, politely declined.
Amazon hasn't publicly said if it's adding storm shelters to any new or existing buildings. Recently, OSHA investigators said Amazon didn't break federal workplace rules in its response to the tornado, but did send a letter recommending several safety changes and calling the storm a wake-up call.
Amazon has said that they're doing more training and drills.
None of it.
Jada Williams still works for Amazon. Others claim they were fired after the tornado.
Amazon, you have to do better.
Still pushing for Amazon to make changes.
This was preventable. And please don't let my fellow drivers die in vain.
I did talk with an Amazon rep and asked them if the company is adding storm shelters to any buildings or warehouses. They wouldn't answer directly, but said, quote, Amazon is constantly looking to innovate and improve safety measures. This is something we're going to keep looking into and try to get answers. Susan Elcory, News 4 investigates.
The construction company that built the warehouse maintains the building was up to code and passed every inspection. You can read the full statement from them, plus see all of our investigative coverage of the warehouse disaster right now on the Kmov News app.
It has been nearly a year since we first saw these heartbreaking images. A tornado ripped through an Edwardsville Amazon warehouse. 6 people died inside of this building. While there have been calls to improve safety, News 4 investigator Susan Elcory exposes the lack of changes.
And that was our only child. So we have a huge loss in our lives.
Alice and Randall McEwen hold on to pictures of their son, Austin.
He was our world.
The way they want to remember him.
He just lit up the room when he walked in.
Not by the devastation of December 10th, 2021.
It ripped my heart out, basically. I mean, it was the worst day of my life.
A day Austin went to work at an Edwardsville Amazon warehouse, not knowing he'd never make it home.
We knew that the tornado had hit the building and that they couldn't get a hold of him.
The warehouse didn't have a storm shelter. Austin was one of 6 employees who took cover in a bathroom when the walls collapsed on them.
There's just no reason for it. They can't afford a shelter.
This is what the warehouse looked like a day after the storm. Now, a year later, it's hard to tell what happened. The warehouse was rebuilt in the same spot. Plans that did not include adding a storm shelter.
It's a slap in the face, it really is.
Weeks after the storm, reporting by News 4 Investigates exposed how the warehouse was built using tilt-up construction, which has a history of catastrophic failures during powerful storms. In tilt-up, concrete walls rely on the roof to stand up. High winds travel up the walls and can rip the roof off, causing the walls to collapse. Amazon has seen that devastation before. In 2018, an EF1 tornado hit an Amazon warehouse in Baltimore. Part of the roof came off and the walls collapsed, killing 2 employees. There was no storm shelter. 3 years later, there was the Edwardsville tornado. The now rebuilt warehouse hasn't changed. It's still tilt-up construction.
If another storm came through there like that, it wouldn't take nothing to have the same exact reaction. And not just to that building, almost every building out there is built the same way.
Amazon reps defended the building days after the storm.
So we know that the building was constructed consistent with code.
While they haven't done another interview, in multiple statements, Amazon maintains the building was up to code and that they leased the warehouse after it was built. As families like the McEwens question why a storm shelter wasn't added in the rebuild, the answer comes down to the law. There's no federal, state, or local requirement for that added protection. At the end of the day, it's a choice between the building owner and Amazon.
It's devastating.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker had a lot to say in the days after the storm.
And I've spoken with the legislators that are here too about whether or not we need to change code based upon the climate change that we're seeing all around us.
The statewide changes he called for haven't happened. Lawmakers considered a bill to start looking at that, but nothing came of it.
The Amazon warehouse got hit.
Here's what has happened in the past year. First, OSHA investigated and found Amazon didn't break any workplace rules, but federal investigators did send this letter telling Amazon to make safety changes.
We are calling on Amazon to be an industry leader for workplace safety. 6 workers died in this event. It was a tragic event. So that by itself should be a wake-up call for employers.
Second, Amazon tried to hire a chief meteorologist, a job that wasn't mentioned before the storm. News 4 Investigates exposed how there have been questions about the structural integrity of the warehouse. An engineer who was called in the night of December 10th claims he saw support columns that weren't properly anchored. Amazon said it's doing an internal investigation into that. When News 4 asked for the results, Amazon wouldn't answer. The tornado also sparked a congressional inquiry. Lawmakers say they're concerned Amazon is making employees work in dangerous conditions. Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush is pushing for federal changes.
Regardless of how these structures are built, that is oversight that we have to work on too. But can we also pass a law that says that if your employee says that, they would rather be home, they would rather leave the facility, they should be able to do that.
Lastly, Amazon faces 5 separate lawsuits filed by surviving employees and families, including the McEwens, who lost their loved ones. Each suit claims Amazon didn't do enough to protect their employees.
I mean, that would be justice for us if they could save other lives. I mean, we felt like our son shouldn't have lost his life.
The warehouse is still under construction. When that's done, we're told Amazon plans to work out of there again. In terms of safety changes, Amazon says they're doing more emergency drills with managers. They're also working on emergency plans that are specific to each location, as opposed to what they had before, which was one plan for all of North America. While Amazon didn't comment on this story, they tell us a spokesperson will be doing interviews on Friday. We plan on being there, and we'll let you know what they say. Susan Elcori, News 4 Investigates.
Tomorrow marks 1 year since 6 people died from that tornado when it hit the Amazon warehouse in Edwardsville. News 4 Investigates has continuously probed the company and the incident and calls for safety changes that have since gone unanswered. But tonight, for the first time since just the days after that storm, we are finally hearing from Amazon. News 4 investigator Susan Elcori has their response to those safety concerns.
We were finally able to take the concerns we've been hearing from survivors and families who lost their loved ones over the past year to Amazon. One of the big questions centers on storm shelters. The Edwardsville warehouse didn't have one, and there's no federal, state, or local requirement to have one in warehouses. The 6 people who died were taking cover in a bathroom. Right now, the warehouse is being rebuilt, and there aren't any plans to add a shelter. That's something we asked Amazon about today.
So I think it's important to remember that we're a tenant at the warehouse and that the landlord is required to restore the building to its pre-tornado condition, and that's what he's doing. That doesn't mean that we're not having conversations with them, but what we're focused on right now are the things we have control over.
What would it take to start looking at storm shelters in these warehouses, which we know can't withstand these powerful storms?
So I would tell you that our network is more than 800 facilities just in North America alone. Something like that is a massive undertaking, and it's going to take time for us to research, to talk with experts and structural engineers, and really determine what is the most effective to ensuring the safety of our employees.
Amazon did tell us about some of the safety changes it has put in place, including having key cards with information on emergency plans and where to go in the event of severe weather. We have a lot more to this interview that we'll be sharing with you tonight at 6:30. Susan Elcori, News 4 Investigates.